content-heavy subjects like social studies, we tend to really hyper-focus on learning the content, the information. But what does that even really mean, to learn the content? Well, typically it means we get the kids to memorize and summarize as much information as they can. And that is all well and good. Memorizing, knowing the information is really important. But remember, that's not the goal. The goal is to get them to learn the information with deep understanding, think critically, and analyze it so that they can make good informed decisions and judgments about what's being presented to them. Hi, welcome back everyone, and if you're new here, my name is Emmy. I'm a teacher and the founder of Loretto Learning, where we provide discussion and project-based classes to homeschooling students. So today we're talking about the most powerful teaching method that I've been using for over 10 years, and it's also just a staple in our programs, and I'm so excited to share it with you today. Let's dive right in. But yeah, we usually stop short after we get the kids to know the content. We shortchange on time and effort, the practice, the process of actually thinking critically and analyzing the information. Why does this happen? Why do we do that? Is it maybe because there's no real clear standard for how to teach analysis? I mean, how do you teach analysis? And maybe it's also because there is so much content that the students are supposed to learn. So then what ends up happening is that we, as the teachers, as the adults, we analyze the information and then we give our students our analysis, or we get them to hear or view somebody else's analysis of the information, and then we get them to memorize that and summarize it, and then we call it a day. We call that, yep, my students have analyzed the information. But did our students really go through the process of investigating, analyzing information, and formulating their own original informed opinions based on facts and hard evidence? Where is this going to leave them for the future? Are they going to just repeat and spread misinformation? Will they be more divided and polarized? Or when they're faced with confrontation, are they just going to avoid it and make appeasements? Or maybe, yeah, they'll get loud and angry, use meaningless and harmful labels on people the way we see others do today, right? Or are they going to be able to engage in productive and peaceful dialogue with people who have different opinions and experiences than them? Are we giving them the practice and knowledge to do this? So as a new teacher, I was very much stuck in this information hamster wheel where I kind of panicked with just the sheer amount of information that I had to teach my students, right? But then I realized I'm not really teaching them how to think. I'm just teaching them what to think, right? And it was also torture. It was intellectually unengaging for the students, so I really struggled getting them to do the work, and it torture for me because it was also intellectually unengaging for me, and I just found this conflict inside of myself where I'm not teaching them how to think. I'm not giving them practice on thinking and communicating, and that is what's important, right? Those skills, those are the skills that they're going to need in the future. I had to take a step back and really think about it. And one day, out of sheer desperation, as I'm sitting there in front of the classroom looking at my fifth graders with pained expressions in their faces as they just flipped through and struggled with the textbook, just the boring textbook, I just blurted out, yeah, look through this, look at the colonies, and at the end of it, we're gonna have a debate on which one was the best. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it was just like, I have to do something. What's going to get them excited? And lo and behold, it there was no turning back from there. It was wonderful. So here are just some of the wonderful benefits I discovered from doing history debates with my students and why I continue to do it. So first, students got excited, right? They begged me to research. Are we going to have time to research this today? Or can I research this particular information? Blah, blah, blah. And they came up with great questions, right? Like their drive to learn, right? They're now hunting for information with more purpose, and they were eager to go above and beyond, not for a grade, not to please the teacher, but to participate well in this debate and to have a good discussion. So to me, that was just an amazing plus, and why I did it even though I was scared. Another really wonderful benefit of the debates is that it develops so many skills, right? It's research, analysis, communication, and persuasion, public speaking, all wrapped into one. Something I really noticed with the students going through the debate is that they got into the habit of challenging information that's presented to them. They're not taking things just at face value now. And so they really ask great questions, original questions that seek to clarify ideas or to make sure that the connections really are logical and that they make sense. And finally, I love the debates because it's just really giving the students practice on how to actually have peaceful and productive conversations with people that have different perspectives, right? And to have conversations based on substance, based on logic and facts, instead of just emotions and bias. By the way, if you're finding this helpful so far, please go ahead and give it a like. It will help to spread it to other people who may also find it helpful. Thank you. Okay, so I hope that I've convinced you to at least give the history debates a try. And so here are some of my tips to help you get started. So 1, be brave, be bold, just dive right in, right? Don't be afraid to get things imperfectly. It won't be perfect, but that's okay. Just know that the more you do it, the better you will get as a facilitator and the better that your students will get as debaters and judges. To make sure you are really thinking about and establishing a guideline for what respectful communication is in your classroom and that it's tailor fit to the students that you have in front of you. And then 3, like I said, just dive right in. Don't be afraid to dive in on the first day. Just give them the rules for respectful communication and then go have a debate. Right? Debate something simple that might not require or that wouldn't necessarily require a lot of content knowledge or background. For example, some of the ones I've used in the past is, should the voting age be lowered to 16, or should we continue to allow the death penalty? So things like that, where students will already have some sort of opinion based on their values. And it's a really good way to start. It's much better than having slides in a lecture on what a debate is and how to do it. Just get them to do it. And then that way you will get to assess and see what areas of growth they have and what strengths they already have and work off of that. But also it teaches them so much more than a lecture, right? Going through it, they get to really understand the importance of, oh, hey, we should really be taking notes when other people are talking, or it's actually really important to have good information to have a better, stronger, more logical argument. Just things like that. It's going to be easier then when you remind them these things as you go through the rest of the unit to do the debate and prepare for your big debate. And then a really key part of having a good debate is over preparation, right? For you as the facilitator and teacher, and for the students as the debaters and the judges. For you, just make sure that you designed a debate using a broad but compelling yes or no question. And there are a lot of great sources on the internet where you can find compelling questions in history, and you can just change it into a yes or no question, or narrow it down between two options, right? Some of the great ones out there is, was the Revolutionary War avoidable? Should the 13 colonies have broken away from Great Britain? Or, the classic Alexander Hamilton versus Thomas Jefferson. Another one that I've done in the past that I love to do is the question of, was the Civil War a just war? So you can see that they're broad, there's a lot there, and it gets the students to really dive in and investigate causes and connections. But it's still compelling, it's still interesting. And bonus, if you can connect it to the present, which it shouldn't be too hard with history, because a lot of the things that have happened in the past is still relevant today. And once you've come up with your question, make sure that you go through it yourself. Just try to think about, what would the strongest arguments be for the affirmative side, and what would the strongest arguments be for the negative sides, and how would they respond to each other? And if your own content knowledge is limited, you can even just try to figure out what questions or topics that the students will need to know in order to come up with strong arguments for the yes and no sides, for the affirmative and the opposition sides. Finally, you do want to make sure that you have a handful of vetted sources for them to get started with, because again, this is going to be a research heavy activity, and the research could potentially never end. There's always just so much information. So it's good to either get them started with a handful of sources that you have already figured out are good and reliable, or set parameters for what their sources can be. You can limit it to those. So since this is a very research heavy activity, it's really important to also give them guidelines for what a credible source on the internet looks like, right? And what I even like to do is for all of the teams to make sure that they share their sources, and we have a deadline. We share all of our links and sources on a document or just something that everyone can access, and they would know. I would give them a heads up, a warning, just that these sources are open to challenge, right? During the debate, your opponents or the judges can question the credibility and validity of the information in these sources. So make sure that you do the work and that your sources are solid. And then it's also really important, especially for younger grades, for younger students, to give them a system to organize their notes. It can be something as simple as a 3-column page or pages in their notes, where whenever they find evidence, they take note of the source and then they put it into one of the 3 columns. Is it strong, good evidence for the affirmative side, or is it for the negative side? Or maybe they're unsure which side it would work for, but it's really important and relevant information. They can put that in a 3rd category. So it can be something as simple as that. The simpler, the better, really, because the information will already be a lot, and you don't want to add systems that will overwhelm them. And then to make sure that all the students are actually engaged in the work, I like to have them start by working individually, right? They need to really look through the sources that I gave them individually first, or the textbook, and then as an entrance ticket to group work, right before I group them into their groups, I like to have them just have a short little write-up on where they think their bias is. Are they more for the affirmative side or more for the opposition side, and why? Like, what's the solid evidence they have for their bias? Or even if they're not sure, they can say that, but they have to give me some sort of reason why based on the research that they have. And so that way, when they go ahead and join their groups, it's a way to make sure that they have done the work, right? That they're not just going to be dead weight, and that they know their biases. It's just a good way to make sure everyone is engaged and that they've already made up some sort of opinion or their minds before someone else can tell them what to think, or they're influenced by somebody else's thoughts and evidence. And finally, this is the debate format that I like to use. I think it's really flexible. There are official formats you can use and look them up online. But for me, this is just the format that I've found works for the kids that I've taught. So first we start with opening statements, timed opening statements for each side, and it's an opening statements that they've prepared beforehand. And then we have a short work time where the groups work together to come up with a response to the opposing team's opening statements, right? And then that goes into round 2, right? Round 1 was the opening statements. Round 2 is their responses. And then after round 2, before I give them another short set of work time, the judges, the student judges, get to pipe in and give their feedback. They can ask challenge questions, right? Or just specific feedback where they say, I think the affirmative group made an excellent point about this. They had a really good logical evidence, strong factual evidence for that. And I think it would be very important for the negative group to address this in the next round. Or maybe they'll say, that argument you made or that claim you made and the evidence about point A and the evidence that you gave didn't connect for me. And I think for the next round, you're going to need to do a better job or connecting them or something like that. So then and the debaters don't respond at that time. They go into their work time and try to again, come up with a good strategy for the next round and a way to address the challenges that the judges brought up. And so then that brings us into round 3, where again, they debate, they present their arguments and responses to one another. And then the judges speak again, give some specific feedback, and then a work time. And then finally, the closing arguments, the closing statements. And then at the end of it, while the judges deliberate and come up with their own decisions and then meet as a group, so they do that privately, I have the debaters sit and kind of write a self-reflection on how they think their team did and then how they think they did individually as just their contribution and what they thought the other teams did well. And then finally, when the judges are done, right, like it's a time deliberation, they announce their decision and why, and then we just have a whole group discussion on the things that were done well and the areas for growth. And before this, I also coached them throughout the unit on how to give constructive, specific feedback so that people aren't offended or take it as a personal attack. And if you're dealing with younger kids or just more sensitive kids, you'll have some of that, but it's a good learning experience for everyone, and they just kind of have to go through it. And I think the more specific you are, like when you coach them to be specific about the things that the students actually did or didn't do, it becomes less of a personal attack and less offensive. And I also try to help them frame it to say, I thought that this could have been clearer, or next time I think it would be helpful if you did this, right? If they gave some sort of specific advice for the future, I think that helps soften the blow a little bit. Anyway, I hope this has been really helpful to you and that you will give these debates a try. It's just been so amazing for me. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect right away. It's not going to be. It's going to get messy. It's going to get ugly, but then just keep doing it and you'll see how beautiful it is. And it's just so amazing that as the students get more practice in it, they just kind of run themselves, and you can just sit back and watch and enjoy like the amazing, wonderful things that happened and how they interact with each other. So yeah, I hope you have a wonderful, blessed week, and I will see you next time.